Previously on Steve's Music Collection.
Dramarama, The Germs, Jane's Addiction, Kinks, John Lennon, Bob Marley, Ziggy Marley, Bosstones, The Police, Rage Against the Machine. Good evening, y'all. Welcome to another video, part 3 of my series focused on the live albums in my collection, just official live albums. I'm not handling any bootlegs or anything like that. These are just officially released live records and CDs. And I hope you're enjoying this. Hope you're sticking with me here as we get through these videos. I know maybe it ain't that easy. You know, when you start one of these videos, sometimes you're like, oh yeah, I got plenty to talk about. And then you start doing them, and you're like, maybe I don't. So I appreciate you sticking in there with me, and I hope you're enjoying this. And by all means, feel free to chime in down below. Let me know some of your favorite live records. And here we go, part 3, all 1979, we get the Ramones and their first live record, It's Alive, named after a horror movie that there were 3 of. It's Alive, It Lives Again, and then Island of the Alive or something. I've seen the first one. I'm actually wishing I could find it streaming somewhere, because I'd like to watch it again just to refresh my memory, because I have very little memory of whether it was good or not. But anyways, that's the end of the video. We just came here to talk about an old horror movie. See y'all. No, but this is their first live record. They've put out a handful since. You can see all this fluorescent jewel case. I just put that on there. It didn't come that way. I think this was in like one of those white jewel cases, because this is like a Warner Archive release, and a lot of the Warner Archive CD releases were in like the white jewel cases. But great snapshot of the original band. This is Tommy is still in the band, Dee Dee is still in the band. Recorded New Year's Eve in 1977 in London. And just a really good show. I mean, you know, I'm sure those of you familiar with the Ramones know they just kind of blitz through these songs, you know. I mean, if the song was 3 minutes on the record, you know, live it was probably 1 minute when the Ramones played it, you know. But 3 minutes is actually long for a Ramones record as well. But yeah, it's a really good collection of songs, you know. Really gives you an idea of like just the energy and just the power of this band when they were live. I never got to see them live, unfortunately. I saw Joey Ramone at I think it was like at a Warped Tour or something, play with another band, but I never got to see these guys together play, which is such a bummer. 1989, we get the Replacements live recording called Incarcerated Live. I always have to double check the spelling of that title. Incarcerated Live. This was released as a promo to go along with the release of the single Aching to Be from the Don't Tell a Soul album. And it's got 5 live tracks that were recorded at the University of Wisconsin. So they put this out, gave this to radio so they could play promo, and I just picked this up recently. I always wanted a copy of it, just got it very recently. You know, the Replacements were famously kind of sloppy live, but in this show, they're kind of hold it together and play pretty well. Now, the interesting thing is this came out in '89, only 5 live tracks, but in, I guess, 2019 or 2020, the Replacements reissued Don't Tell a Soul in a box set. They called it Dead Man's Pop. And 2 of the CDs on that were the full concert of this. So you can get it on CD if you buy Dead Man's Pop, but not standalone. You can't go out and just buy that. You have to buy the whole Dead Man's Pop box to get that. But I did pick it up on vinyl. They did release it separately on its own on vinyl. This is, I think, what, 3 LP set. I just got this recently. I guess it was released for Record Store Day in 2019 or 2020. Yeah, it just has the whole concert from that University of Wisconsin. They do a handful of covers, Another Girl, Another Planet, Black Diamond, Born to Lose. I wish I could pick it up separately just as a CD, because I'm not that interested in buying the full Dead Man's Pop collection. I don't know, maybe someday if I find it really cheap I will. But yeah, that's the Replacements. And guess what? 2017 brings us more Replacements live. This one is called For Sale, live at Maxwell's, 1986. Maxwell's was a great club in Hoboken, New Jersey. I saw many shows there. Did not see the Replacements there. I never saw the Replacements like the Ramones. I never saw the Replacements back in the day. I did see the Replacements on their reunion tour. I think it was 2015, which was good, but it was just Paul Westerberg and Tommy Stinson at that point. But yeah, this is a really interesting set, you know, that they put out of, I guess famously, they've got like the old Sire label there. I guess famously the Replacements, they were trying to record them live to kind of capture that, you know, and they recorded this possibly to release it back then, but they just, for whatever reason, they ended up not putting it out until years later. And I think Tommy Stinson was famously said that this, you know, is kind of the only decent recording of the Replacements live. But it's a good show. You know, you get a little bit of that sloppiness. I mean, you definitely kind of get a feel for what a Replacements show would have been like to see back then. But yeah, it's cool that this is available and exists, you know. Can't Hardly Wait, Unsatisfied, Tommy Gets His Tonsils Out. Great tunes on here, really cool. And Bob Stinson's still in the band at this point, so you get to hear him play. So yeah, a couple of really good live records from the Replacements. Almost said the Ramones. 2014, we get the Screaming Females and their release live at the Hideout. Hideout is a club in Chicago. They recorded this back in January of 2014. Awesome indie rock band. If you're not familiar with them, really got to check them out, specifically for Marissa Paternoster. She's the lead singer and the guitar player, and I mean, she is just incredible on the guitar. Speaking of Maxwell's with the Replacements thing, the first time I saw them live was at Maxwell's. I heard about this band, and I think I'd heard a couple of their songs. They were playing at Maxwell's. I think they were opening for another band. I went to that show like on a broken foot too. And I go in there and they start playing, and I don't think I'd seen any videos of them or anything like that. But I knew she was a pretty good guitar player, and seeing her play live, like in this small club right in front of me, I swear at that moment, I was like, this must have been what it was like to see Jimi Hendrix before he was famous in some club, or to see Eddie Van Halen at some club in California before anybody knew who he was. It was that, like, you know, just blew me away. You know, it was just amazing. She's just incredible. I don't follow like guitar magazines or anything like that, and they should be covering her. She should be one of those people where they interview her and talk to her about her, you know, gear and just her playing and everything. If she's not being recognized by those guys, they are sorely missing out. But just a really awesome guitar player. Yeah, just a really cool band. Good live show, good collection, you know. Yeah, I highly recommend checking these guys out, and specifically, you know, to see her play or to hear her play. 1996, we get the Sex Pistols and their album Filthy Lucre Live. This was recorded in June of 1996 and released a month later in July of 1996. This, of course, was released to kind of, you know, capitalize on the big initial reunion of the Sex Pistols with Glenn Matlock back in the band. They did a big tour that summer. I went and saw them in New York at Roseland, and it was an incredible show. I really enjoyed it. And yeah, so this live record was put out, you know, as that tour was kind of still going on. and it's good. I like it. You know, it's a good show, good set. You know, Sex Pistols had their tiny little brief moment in history, and it's just funny how it's just, like a band that had put out like essentially one record, and they're still talked about today, and people are extremely familiar with them. It's just, kind of unheard of. This has like all the tunes that you'd expect them to have on here, and it's good. I like it. I enjoyed that reunion quite a bit. I saw them, they did a second reunion tour maybe 3 years later or 4 years later or whatever, and it was good. It wasn't as good though, but yeah, that's the Sex Pistols. 1987, we get the Simple Minds and Live in the City of Light, which is Newark, New Jersey, if you're not familiar. Surprised me. I wasn't sure. I always thought it was Paris, but nope, Newark. But double set from the band. This comes out right after. This is the follow-up to Once Upon a Time, which was their, major breakthrough in the United States, at least. Right after Don't You Forget About Me, they put out Once Upon a Time, and had a lot of success with that album. I guess, fans of the band who've been with fans of the band for a while, I think some of them weren't that crazy about Once Upon a Time because it had much more of kind of like a standard arena rock sort of show. It was almost like they were kind of borrowing a page out of the U2 playbook in a way. But I love that album. I mean, that made me a fan. I wasn't familiar with this band before that, and I just loved that record to death. It's one of my favorites of all time. And this was the follow-up, which it was kind of weird. They had all that success, and then to put out a live record seemed like you just kind of killed all the momentum. They should have followed it up with another studio album, and their follow-up studio album didn't come for, like 85 was when Once Upon a Time came out. Their follow-up, Street Fighting Years, I think came out in 89, so it was like almost 5 years later. But and it didn't do well here in the United States. But this live record didn't do anything special in the United States, but I think again in Europe, where they had a much bigger following, it did really well. And I guess the reasoning is that if you look at the track listing, it's almost like a greatest hits collection. So maybe the reasoning was, hey, we have all these new fans in the United States. They don't know anything by us pre Don't You Forget About Me. So if we put out a live record, they're going to get, a little taste of like all of our previous popular songs. They'll buy it maybe because it's got the songs they know on it live, and then they'll get these other songs from our previous albums. So I guess that was the reasoning. And it doesn't sound like a horrible idea, but I don't know, it just seemed to me like you'd want to capitalize on the success and having this whole big new audience with like another studio record. But yeah, it's good. I like it. I used to have this on vinyl, and I sold it when I got rid of my record player. I wish I had held on to it, but whatever. What are you going to do? 1988, we get Rank by The Smiths. And I picked this one up used, and I am really dumb because I'm not a big Smiths fan, but I saw this, I don't remember where I picked it up, but I saw this somewhere, and I looked at the track listing, and it was like, oh, like a handful of these tunes I knew and I kind of liked, and I'm sure it was probably fairly cheap, but I didn't know that this was a live record. And I say that I'm dumb because right up here it says Rank is a live recording, and I swear I just must have completely overlooked that because I had no idea this was a live record. I thought it was maybe some sort of like best of or something, but it's all right. Like I said, I'm not a big Smiths fan, so this is more, I think, for the Smiths fan in your life. But some decent stuff on here, but kind of a funny picture here. In here, these people are ripping up a Morrissey t-shirt. If you're familiar with the history of this band, that probably puts a little smile on your face. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, one of my favorite tunes by them is called Panic. That's on here, but not something that I really, grab to listen to all that frequently. I probably should. I don't know the last time I listen to this record, probably when I got it. 1986, we get Sting, Bring On the Night, 2 CD set. I had this, similar to Simple Minds, I had this on vinyl. I bought it, I remember buying it at Tower Records in New York when it came out, and had it for years. And then when I got rid of my record player, I sold it off. And again, I wish I had held on to most of those records, but what are you gonna do? I didn't think I'd ever own a record player again. That's why I got rid of them. But this is, you know, right after his first solo record, Dream of the Blue Turtles. And really good. I like this. I mean, I like those first 2 solo Sting records. After that, he kind of lost me. But I really like this concert. There's, you know, he obviously does a few Police songs, and some of them, I like the title track, Bring On the Night, which is a Police song. I actually kind of liked their version on here more than I like the Police version, believe it or not. But yeah, it's a good concert. There was a film that came out called Bring On the Night. This came out in, I don't know, in 86, later in 86 maybe, but the film came out in, I think, 1985, directed by Michael Apted. It's a really interesting documentary, just showing like the formation of, you know, talking about him leaving the Police, so to say, and forming this band, which was just an awesome band. I mean, it's more like kind of jazz elements in there, but it worked, you know, it really worked. And I mean, he had, you know, just some amazing people in his band, all really good tunes on here, little mix of the Police and his solo record, you know. But yeah, I like this, you know. I really enjoyed this live record. 1980, we get the soundtrack, Decline of Western Civilization, which was a documentary about the punk scene in Los Angeles in the late 70s, early 80s. Great film. I've talked about this numerous times. Really love this film. And the soundtrack's really good. You got all these kind of bands from that film playing live. Get a little snippet of all of them. And just really cool soundtrack to have a little like taste of these guys live. And I also have this, just picked it up recently on vinyl. It's a reissue here, but you know, you've got Black Flag, Germs, X, Circle Jerks, Alice Bag Band, Fear, Catholic Discipline, which that's the only band that I'm not that familiar with on this record. And I think that they were kind of just formed right before this movie was made and everything. And I don't know if they may have like ceased to exist after that. I'm not really sure, but they're the only ones I'm not really familiar with them. And finally, 1986 brings us what apparently is the second best-selling live record of all time. This is Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band live, 1975 to 1985. I have this on CD. When it was released, it was on cassette, on vinyl, on CD, even on 8-track. And it's in this little Fat Boy CD, 3 CD set. Covers his whole career up into his big popular album, Born in the USA. When this came out, I remember it was just such a big deal. I'm just kind of, this is a big, fat, thick book, but it's mainly just like the lyrics. But this was, when this record was released, I remember it being like a big deal. Like, I think it already like sold like 1 million some odd copies before it was even hitting the stores. Stores were like opening up at midnight so people could buy it immediately. It was just like this kind of phenomenon, you know, like fans had been waiting for this stuff forever, and did not disappoint them, you know. And I've listened to these, I haven't listened to them in a long time, but you know, it's really good. It's very high energy, you know. He always kind of does some cool versions of his songs live, changes them up a little bit here and there, and you know, hear the audience just really enjoying every minute of it. But yeah, just a cool collection. He's put out a whole bunch of live records since, you know, but this obviously is the granddaddy of them all. Earl's that. But just, everything you would probably want up until that time, is covered on here, from those albums. Yeah, so that's that. But thank you for tuning in. Guess what, everybody? Only one more left, I promise. Just one more. Hang in there. We only got one more video to go, and then it's all over. And then it's back to me showing other nonsense. But please chime in. Let me know your favorite live records or what you think of any of these if you have them. And we shall see you the next time. Later on.